Hello, everyone, and welcome to the International Day of Women in Diplomacy. I am excited because we have a phenomenal panel of women who are going to be discussing diplomacy. What is diplomacy? What does that mean? And who are women in diplomacy? Some people do not know. And what's the term between diplomacy and ambassadorship? And what does all of that mean? Why do you have HE in front of your name? What are these things? So, we're going to have an educational panel today on this International Day of Women in Diplomacy. But first, I want to give you a couple of things that you may not know, particularly about women in diplomacy. I actually did a little research because I do like to do research. I found out that the first female diplomat in the world, her name was Alexandra Kollontai. On March 19th, 1872, in Petersburg, Virginia, the People's Commissioner of Public Charity, and she was the first woman ambassador in the world. Isn't that incredible? A second fact I found out, another woman, Helen Eugene Moore Anderson, was the first woman to serve in the post of U.S. ambassador and diplomat. So, we are going to meet three phenomenal diplomats today, three women from three different parts of the world to share about diplomacy and particularly women in diplomacy. They are bringing different perspectives from different parts of the world. So, without further delay, let's get to it. And you will have a chance to ask your questions and get answers from our panelists after they present. So we are going to start with Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie. She is an ordained minister of the gospel, an author, a trainer, coach, mentor, entrepreneur, and conference speaker. She is also founder of Angelic Grace Ministries International Incorporated, a nonprofit, tax exempt 501c3 organization, and the Gracie Group. She served for over 20 years in corporate America and 25 in full time ministry as a human resource officer, assistant church administrator, and an executive director. As a certified business instructor with the International Business Training Institute, she has served as business development instructor, equipping many emerging entrepreneurs with the skills to write a winning business plan, successfully launch a business, and form strategic partnerships. In addition to serving the MD Department of Economic Development's Women's Business Center as a business instructor, she's also conducted trainings in project management and nonprofit development. She is known for her advocacy for women in business, providing testimony before Philadelphia's City Council to provide funding for women in business. She later received a citation from the mayor's office under the signature of Mayor John Street for outstanding contribution to micro enterprises. Word of Life Ministries International Consultative Cabinet, an NGO with special consultative status to the United Nations, appointed her as a peace ambassador to the United Nations. In 2022, she was honored to receive an honorary doctorate of philosophy humane letters from Sika International University and Seminary. Later that year, she was honored with the President's Lifetime Achievement Award under the signature of President Joseph Biden. Ambassador Gracie is active in WOMI ICC's departments of Leadership and Women's Affairs, the Department of Northeastern Affairs International Consultative Cabinet, Secretary and co-host of UN Rocks, a monthly broadcast on WOMI TV, Information and Communications Department, and the Department of Humanitarian Affairs. She is a member of the Global Society of Female Entrepreneurs in New York and is the newly appointed Director General for the state of Maryland by the African Union 6th region. Her Excellency Ambassador Gracie's passion is to equip, empower, and motivate leaders in ministry and the marketplace. Let us welcome Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You can go ahead and on your camera. There you
Good
go.
morning.
Well,
Good morning. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, Dr. Mckaney, for that warm welcome. I just wish to thank you for the opportunity to share on this platform today. And also, I want to acknowledge my colleagues, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Rejoice Foli, and also Carolyn Grace Embarga when she is able to be with us. But we are here today to commemorate the International Day of Women in Diplomacy. Right now, today, in New York, this second annual commemorative event is marked by the gathering of diplomats and high-level officials, senior representatives of the UN system, and stakeholders, and they are all gathering to discuss issues around women and diplomacy. And so we are here doing our part to educate and to bring awareness about women and diplomacy. This year's theme is Women's Leadership and Multilateral Diplomacy. Women's Leadership and Multilateral Diplomacy. Today, my task is to talk about women in diplomacy with the focus on women in governance. And that can be in politics, it can be in an advocacy arena, it could be as business leaders, as nonprofit leaders. So I want to just begin really quickly by just sharing with you the definition of diplomacy, because some people may not be aware. So diplomacy is the art and practice of conducting negotiations between nations. It can also be the art of and practice of conducting negotiations between organizations, between different groups of people, between governments, between nations. And it is a skill in handling affairs without arousing hostility. That's one of the nuances of diplomacy. It's the art and practice of conducting negotiations, but doing it in a way that does not arouse hostility. It is I like to call it a highly level skill of being tactful. So that is the definition. So why do we have ambassadors then that uh, that move in this arena? Typically because ambassadors are those who represent their nation, they represent their sovereignty, and they act on behalf of their nation. And oftentimes they are called in to nuance situations, to smooth over rough edges, and just to smooth over a situation um, where politics and that part doesn't uh, is not as effective. And so ambassadors are actually agents of goodwill, and they act on behalf of their company of their country, I'm sorry, for the betterment of the people, of the sovereignty, to keep peace in the world. And God uses us in a myriad of different ways. I probably couldn't even tell you all the ways in which God would use an ambassador, or the tasks that they perform are varied. It could be anything from um, meeting with a group of dignitaries and providing them with information about a particular situation. It could be being available to answer questions about a particular issue in your area of expertise, of course. So it could be any number of different ways. We could be on a trip to a particular country to meet with a group of people who are struggling with a problem, and to bring some level of peace and consistency in the conflict. So those are just some of the ways off the top of my head, in which ambassadors are used in the world. So today, let me get to my topic. Now that we know what ambassadors are, they are typically, we have been appointed by an organization called WI.N, Word of Life Ministries International. They have special consultative status with the United Nations, and they have the authority and power to appoint peace ambassadors to the United Nations, and I am one of which. And so is my colleague here, Her Excellency Dr. Anita Mckaney. And so we've come along kind of together in this role, and we are getting out there and getting our feet wet and bringing education and awareness, not only about what we do, but what the United Nations does and all the ways in which we support women. Today, it's about women in diplomacy, but in other times of the year, we advocate for to end violence against women, for instance. We have the Commission on the Status of Women earlier in the year, where we talk about and advocate for all issues women. So these are things that we talk about and do all the time as ambassadors. Historically, diplomacy has been the preserve of men. It's time, to recognize and celebrate the ways in which women are breaking barriers and making a difference in the world of diplomacy. As of 2014, there were 143 countries that guaranteed equality between men and women in their constitutions. But there were 52 countries who have yet to make this important commitment. Advocating for increased representation for women in key decision-making positions will greatly shape and implement multilateral agendas. Women have been playing a crucial role in the United Nations since its inception in 1945. So it's been a very long time that women, they may not have held key positions, but women have had a voice in the UN since they began. The UN General Assembly, known as the UNGA, is the world's largest yearly meeting that takes place at the United Nations every year. World leaders come and meet there, and it has been the setting for several historical moments for gender equality. Much has yet to be achieved, however, regarding women's representation and their participation. For instance, I found out that just 4 women, have been elected president of the UN General Assembly in its 77 years. Just 4. So we have a long way to go, right? And between 1992 and 2019, which is probably a period of 30-something years, women have represented only 13% of negotiators, 6% of mediators, and 6% of signatories in peace processes worldwide. So gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls will also make a crucial contribution to the progress across all of the Sustainable Development Goals. In order for all of the Sustainable Development Goals to be actualized, it will require that women and girls be empowered to participate and to have a voice. The systematic mainstreaming of a gender perspective in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda is crucial, especially since SDG 5 happens to be the goal for women's equal participation in decision-making. Women's equal participation and representation at all levels of decision-making are key to unlocking the transformational changes needed to secure a sustainable future. Inclusive governance can result in policies that create positive change over the long term. To have positive transformational change over the long term requires inclusive governance. Countries where there are women in legislative and executive branches of government are seeing benefits, and I want to share with you some of those benefits that they are experiencing as a result of having women in legislative and executive branches of government. First of all, the women and girls represent half of the world's population, so therefore they have half of the potential, right? Countries where there are more women in legislative and executive branches of government have less defense spending. Isn't that something? They have less defense spending and more social spending. Women's leadership styles, their expertise, and their priorities broaden the scope of issues being discussed. We bring a unique perspective to the table. Our experiences, our gifts, our talents, our resources. We bring a different flavor, a different side to the table when discussing issues concerning women and just concerning the ordinary people. It is known, and they have discovered, that women tend to pass laws and policies that benefit ordinary people, that benefit the environment, that benefit social and cultural cohesion. We can see a big picture. And I think that we have been uniquely graced and gifted. Everybody else has five senses, but we have six, right? And we can see everything, right? We can see what's going on in our home with our kids, with our husband, in our communities. We have a different eye, as it were. And it is beneficial, even in areas of governance. And and I'm not talking about, I know there are those who they still are of the opinion that we belong, in domesticated roles. But, there's such a thing as skills transference. And we transfer those skills that we use to run and administrate and facilitate our homes into the boardroom, into the classroom, into the operating room. We are able to walk into all of those rooms with our gifts, talents, and abilities. And the community and the world and even government are better for it. Women in legislative and executive branches enhance the effectiveness of governance in a way that ensures a wide range of perspectives and experiences in a way that are considered in the decision-making process. So we have a way of ensuring a wide range of perspective and experiences when it comes to the decision-making process. Gender inclusivity affects diversity and allows for a more equitable contribution and a better informed laws and policies that address the needs of every citizen. It's absolutely critical, even in these times. And, we don't rag on the men, but what we need to do is walk alongside them. And what we're saying is that our communities, our families, our government, our world, the nations are better when we walk alongside one another, when they bring us along and listen to our voices. But we still have challenges, right? Women still experience violence against women in politics. For instance, there was a congresswoman right here in the United States. Her home was invaded and her husband was assaulted over something that was going on. We had another Congresswoman, Gabby, who was shot some years ago in a public political event. We have women who have been intimidated in the arena of politics. And then, of course, we have those who have been sexually harassed and abused and discriminated against. And these things create hostile work environments for women to work in. The famous case of Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, oh my goodness, landmark, right? We've seen these situations take place in our government. But you know what? When you come right down to it, when women experience these kind of violations, it's very much a human rights issue because they have a right to have a voice. They have a right to work in a safe place. They have a right to participate in a democracy. These are all human rights, as stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so this is very much a human rights issue as well, that women be allowed to have their voices heard and to participate in governance. So these violations threaten their participation, first of all, to even want to enter the arena. Secondly, it silences their voices because they feel that they can't speak up, that their voices won't be heard. And it acts as a deterrent to their participation in the political process altogether. These are just some of the those were just some of the benefits and hindrances to women being able to participate in governance and in our diplomatic, in our business processes, and in those arenas. In my personal experience, I've had the opportunity, as Ambassador Anita mentioned in my bio, to advocate for women before City Council, to write a report and to go before them and to advocate for women in business. I will write letters to a governor or to a representative in a minute. And so those are ways in which we can make our voices heard. Sometimes we may not always be in a key position to make decisions, but we can certainly wield our influence through our voice, through writing letters, through advocating, through platforms like this, educating and making people aware. Sometimes things don't change because people just aren't aware of what the real issues are. And these platforms are needed because we can make it clear and make it plain what our challenges are and what we're dealing with. I had a thought this morning, and I thought to myself, I said, we have the power to vote. We have the right to vote, at least in our country. Women have the right to vote. And so if we have the right to vote, then we should have a voice. And maybe we should leverage our vote, because if we don't have a voice, then maybe they don't get our vote. Maybe they don't get our support. Maybe they don't get the benefit of our time, talent, and our resources. There are ways in which we have the power to leverage some things so that our voices can be heard. And so I just wanted to put that out there. Our vote matters, and we do have a voice. I wanted to just talk about a couple of notable women, just a few. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but I thought of a few women that really made a difference in governance. And some of them didn't really hold like the power position, but how many of you know that sometimes just because we don't hold the position, but sometimes we hold positions of influence? I remember a mentor telling me that a long time ago. Sometimes having the ear of the person who's in power, or the ear of the person who is sitting in the seat, can be just as effective and just as beneficial. So let me just mention a few. Shirley Chisholm was one of the first Black females to run for president of the United States. She opened the door, really. I mean, that was the door opener for women to even think that they could enter that arena. She was very brave, because back in those days, women just didn't do that. They just didn't do that. And so we applaud her, and her contributions are many. But, I can't talk all day, so I just have to mention them and just give you an idea. Sherelle Parker is the first Black female mayor of the city of Philadelphia, which is my hometown. And she was just elected this past election season. Vice President Kamala Harris, how about that? The first women of color in the seat of the vice presidency. It's the first time. And then there was First Lady Michelle Obama. And one of the things that she did, although she wasn't a vice president or in the presidential seat, but she greatly influenced our nation. She got us up moving and exercising, and she was planting gardens and encouraging us to eat clean, whole foods. And now we have community gardens springing up all over the place in Baltimore and in areas around Maryland, and I'm sure in other parts of the country. So she is an example of someone who had a tremendous influence over her nation, even though she was the first lady, not vice president or president. You get my point. And then we have Justice Ketanji Johnson, who is the first Black female justice on the Supreme Court. How about that? That was one I never thought would see happen. But she is there, and she is able to use her skills and all of her legal prowess and expertise to affect change in this nation. And finally, I couldn't leave this one out. We have a former First Lady whose key contribution was the development and the implementation of what we know today as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, none other than Eleanor Roosevelt. What a contribution she made. She was a first lady, and she was also appointed as an ambassador. Let me just tell you a little bit about her. She was the First Lady of the United Nations of America from 1933 to 1945. Eleanor Roosevelt was appointed in 1946 as a delegate to the United Nations General Assembly by the United States President Harry S. Truman. She served as the first chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights and played an instrumental role in drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. At a time of increasing East-West tensions, Eleanor Roosevelt used her enormous prestige and credibility with both superpowers to steer the drafting process toward its successful completion. In 1968, she was posthumously awarded the United Nations Human Rights Prize. What a contribution women have made in the field of governance and in politics. And we can do the same. You never know what doors are going to open. We never know how we're going to be able to use our gifts, talents, and abilities. But all we have to do is to be brave enough to speak up, be brave enough to discuss and to bring these issues to the fore, and to take what we have been given, our gifts, talents, and resources, and utilize them for the effectiveness of our nation, our communities, our families. And that is why I'm here. That is why I am here to advocate for women in diplomacy, because this is the role that God has called me to in this season. Finally, I just want to mention a young lady whose work in peace building, in the peace building process in South Sudan. Her participation in gender equal participation contributes to longer lasting peace after conflict. Susan Sabet, she's 32 years old, and she is an accomplished lawyer and an advocate for women's participation in governance and leadership. For decades, her home country of South Sudan has been overwhelmed by conflict. Because of the tireless advocacy of this leader's skills, Sabet has influenced South Sudan's peace processes. She has engaged a coalition of 40 women's organizations to come together for peace talks that led to the successful conclusion of gender responsive provisions in the agreement. A marvelous contribution. This story was just particularly close to my heart because I had an opportunity to take a mission trip to South Sudan many years ago. And on the few days before we were to leave, there was a women's rally. And they were going to be marching down to the city's capital in the center of the city about women's issues and women's rights, because many of the women, this was, by the way, a few years after the Civil War. I was there in 2008. I think the war ended in 2005. And they were going to, to advocate for women's issues and women's rights, because many of them have been abused and tortured and all sorts of things during the conflict. Well, we were drafting a document to take to the city officials, and I had an opportunity to help contribute to that document. And I had an opportunity to help edit and to add and to adjust, and so that we could really make our statement. And so although I wasn't able to go because I had sprained my ankle, as it turned out, like a couple of days prior, and I couldn't walk on my foot. But I was able to participate in this crafting this document. And so what am I saying? I'm saying that you never know when the opportunity will come where we will be able to give input and to contribute to change and to contribute to the process. Sometimes change doesn't come right away. Sometimes we have to wait for for the process to work itself through. But when we have those opportunities, we want to take them. And I don't, it's been many years since then. And I know that they were all able to go. I know that there were changes. I don't remember all of the specifics about it now. It's because it's been a little minute, but I can tell you this, in a way, I really don't even have to know. I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to step up and to make my voice heard and to help them make their voices heard when the opportunity came. And that's what ambassadors would do. I was actually there on a conference to as a trainer, but I had an opportunity to step up and to help these women who have been victims of abuse and trauma due to war, and to help them make their case. And for that, I am eternally grateful. And so I want to just encourage us today to step into those arenas and don't be afraid and allow your voice to be heard in whatever way that presents itself. And remember, your vote matters, and you can leverage your voice, your vote, because both, if you don't have one, perhaps they shouldn't have the other. God bless you.
Oh my goodness, how incredible. Let's give a round of applause to Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie. Thank you so much. You took us through a myriad of things. You talked about governance and women in government. You shared about how women, being women, can transfer their skills as women into government, into diplomacy, and into areas of influence. You talked about the history of diplomacy, and you talked about the violence that has taken place with many women that have tried to make change over the years. You also mentioned about women being in positions of influence, even though they may not have titles, even though they may not have those things, they are still influential. That was a phenomenal point. And then you also mentioned about people in particular, like Michelle Obama, like Eleanor Roosevelt, women who have shaped history in governance, in ambassadorship, and in diplomacy, which is key because it's still happening, right? It's still something that has not stopped. There's a lot of women that are active in politics, active in these things that are still making great change. And then you talked about some benefits and some hindrances for women in particular in diplomacy, which I found especially helpful because there are so many hindrances still for women to go further to make change and to especially affect change for other women. And then you kind of closed by telling us about the process that it's ongoing, that it's something that hasn't stopped yet, but that we are still pursuing this. I'm looking over in the chat. Thank you to all of you who are here. Um, there was a comment that said, Yippee for Mayor Sherelle Parker, the 100th mayor of Philadelphia, and the first woman of color in that position. We also had another comment that said, First Lady Roosevelt was the first to fly with a Black man from Tuskegee Airmen. Incredible. So you are definitely a blessing to us today as we have learned so much. And being a proponent of education, I am greatly pleased and honored to have you here with us today. So, this is just the beginning. We have another phenomenal woman in diplomacy that we want to share with you. I
Thank
want
you.
to introduce to you our next panelist and our next speaker. And as they are speaking, please feel free to avail yourselves to the chat to ask questions. We want to, before I introduce the next panelist, if you have any questions for Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie, you are free to share those now. You can share it in the chat or you can on your camera and share out loud. That's fine. Are there any questions for her at this time? Someone says, thank you, Dr. Gracie, for sharing great insight on diplomacy. Another person says, great presentation. Wonderful. And if you have questions still, even as the program is ongoing, feel free to share those as well. Thank you so much for being here. So we are going to move to our next presenter, which is Her Excellency Dr. Rejoice W. Foli. She is a UN Global Peace Ambassador. She is a project risk and corporate governance consultant. She is also a banker and a licensed psychologist. She is a protocol and diplomatic affairs advisor and trainer. With great gratitude, I am pleased to welcome to the stage Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Rejoice W. Foli. She is hailing to us all the way from Ghana. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Anita. All protocols observed, Your Excellency, Ambassador Prophetess Lisa, Ambassador Angela, and all audience here. I'm grateful that I'm part of this from Africa joining you today. It's good afternoon here and good morning to you all. It's all about diplomacy. If it's okay with you, Your Excellency Anita, I can share my screen. Yes. So as I've been introduced already, I'm one of the servants that is helping in the World agenda as an ambassador and a special envoy to Ghana. I'm here and given the responsibility and assignment to develop and train my nation and make people aware about what diplomacy is, what ambassadorial activities are. Happy to have all of you. The first question I'll ask, if you find yourself in the seat as an ambassador, what comes to mind? Someone can put it in the chat. It's a probing question. The second question is, what do others think about you? The third one is, do you expect those memories that others will have about you to be persistent, to be existent, to leave a legacy that will be sustainable? Or finally, you are just craving for the title? These are 4 questions, just to break the ice for what I'm about to say. My country is about to do elections. So the question is, what are we doing as women seeking peace during these elections? As ambassadors, what are we doing to incite, to educate, to advocate, to build capacity for our women to either hold the seats or help others to integrate quality peace, not just peace, but peace that impacts the physical being, impacts the spiritual being, and also impacts the atmosphere. It's all about seeing a smile on somebody's face, but it takes work to get there. When it comes to Ghana, I always say that it is not easy to let someone smile. But when one person smiles, it affects a whole lot of people. I want to see a hand raised up. If you agree with me, just give me a wave in a reaction button. If you agree with me that smiles are infectious, fantastic. If smiles are infectious, how do we get to that stage for people to smile? When it comes to politics and elections in Africa, Ghana, for instance, women are struggling to make sure that the law, which is the Affirmative Action Bill, ensuring gender equality, is passed. Why is it so? It is because it's only 4% of local women are within the local government setup. It is because Only 14.45% of women are in parliament. It is because the overall only 14.5 are represented in other activities that we do. Therefore, the external factors and other things that are making this not to come to pass, it's something that we as women are fighting for in Africa. Me as an ambassador, what am I doing? Or what am I encouraging other ladies and women to do to make sure that this law comes to play? I had the opportunity to develop the National Corporate Governance Code for the country, bringing principles of integrity, bringing principles of advocacy, bringing principles of embedding good governance into our women. When it comes to diplomacy and what we learn as women ambassadors and what we are supposed to advocate and preach about, we talk about distance. Poor communication brings conflict. Lack of compromising brings conflict. If needs are not met, everyone wants to be involved. Everyone wants to be appreciated. Everyone needs something. When it comes to the expectancy theory, people want to be satisfied because of what they gain, and people want to be appreciated because of what they get from others. Prejudice brings conflict. Intolerance. When we crave for power, Maslow said, if the hierarchy of needs that makes people to be self-actualized, everyone is craving for power. Everyone wants to get to the esteem stage. Therefore, individuals are not willing to tolerate each other, accommodate each other. Self-interest at a very high level, which brings greed and desire, unhealthy desires. But as ambassadors, our duty is to make sure that all these things look at the growth aspects, growth mindset, poor communication. What do we do as ambassadors during election, during times of conflicts? We need to encourage positive thinking, positive communication, empathize with people. Look at people at the other side of the coin. If it's a 6 I'm writing, I should know that if somebody is at the other side of the table, that person will see it as a 9. And I need to appreciate the person because of his point of view, where the person is sitting, what's the angle. That is what makes the person think like that. Therefore, when it comes to empathy, we as women, we as ambassadors, we as stewards, we as servant leaders, we need to be ready to see things from the other side of our colleagues, the other side of the community that we are serving, the other side of the work colleagues that we have, our churches, even if it's in the mosque. We have to just appreciate people and see them from the other point of view.
Yes.
Then we need to stop making assumptions because, like I said, the letter 6, somebody could see it as 9 based on that person's point of view. Another could see it as a P, which stands for Paul. Another will see it as a B, which stands for ball. And another will still see it as 6. So when we are thinking, have an open mindset that makes us see things like that. All these things, if we don't do them right, they impact our emotional intelligence, they impact our psyche, and we have mental health problems. So should somebody get angry, it means we are not implementing the emotional intelligence aspects well. Those of us who are ambassadors are not know that there is conflict coming. What can we do to make sure that the environment has a positive atmosphere? Happiness. Is it logistics that we have to provide? Are we ready to encourage people and talk to people to understand the purpose of election? It is not for greediness. It is for country building. It is for global building. It is for humanity's growth and sustainability. Keeping people in their good mood. I want to conclude and say, if you have the opportunity to promote diplomacy in your workplace, in your community, in your church, at the mosques, at the roadside, when you see the needy, the street children, even in the hospitals, what will you do? Thank you. This is just a nugget. As I see Ambassador Angela nodding, I know she wants to hear more, but we are working with time.
For sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Dr.
Wonderful.
Anita.
Thank you to Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Rejoice Foley. You can finish sharing your screen. Thank you so much. We are so grateful to you for sharing with us today. If everyone can please mute, we can continue the presentation and everyone will be able to hear everyone. Please mute. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much.
I say I remember the meeting, you know.
Thank you. So thank you so much to Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Rejoice Foley. She spoke about causes of conflict. Powerful. She spoke about how important it is to understand that conflicts can stem from many places, especially for women, women in diplomacy, poor communication, not being willing to compromise. She spoke about making assumptions, and I loved your example about how some people see 6, some people see 9, some people see the letter P, some people see the letter B. I love that so much. You talked about promoting advocacy wherever you are. It might be in your workplace, it might be in your church, it might be in your neighborhood, it might be local, governmental level. At all levels, we can actually promote diplomacy. And it goes back to having that position of influence, right, Dr. Gracie? Once again, we can be influential no matter who we are, whether we have a title or not. God has called us to be ambassadors everywhere. And so you are an ambassador. I am an ambassador. We all have this same agenda to promote peace, to make things not just equal, but equitable for people all over the world. And so we thank you for your presentation. We had some comments in the chat, which were pretty phenomenal. One person said, I feel the weight of the responsibility and the ability to impact people's lives and help bring upgrade. So true. Another person said, everyone is not on the same level as you are. Allow people room and opportunity to grow. And I think she was speaking to talking about the different causes of conflict that you mentioned. How incredible. So I want to open it up to any questions that anyone has. A couple people said this was so powerful. Another person mentioned having a growth mindset, which of course is very important. Actually, I have that here on my desk. Mindset is everything. So I appreciate that comment especially. And then another person said, thank you, Ambassador Rejoice. Excellent. So thank you once again to Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Rejoice Foley. She has also been, and she's modest, but she's also been special envoy to Ghana, which is incredible when you are able to be sent to another country as a representative. So that is incredible. We want to ask you about that, being a special envoy to Ghana. Dr. Is she still here? I just want to make sure she didn't go anywhere. Okay, we wanted to ask you about that and tell us more about being special envoy to Ghana, if you don't mind. That's our first question.
Okay, so fortunately, when I joined W.I.N, after the training, Dr. Finn, His Excellency Dr. Finn, and Dr. Sharon saw my profile and all that, and other things that I do with the cabinet and etc. And they gave me that blessing, or should I say I was blessed to go out there and then continue the training in diplomacy and advocacy and all that. So using the platform and the gifts that God has given me, everywhere that I go within the country, being in the army, private sector, public sector, the financial sector, everywhere that I lay my footprints past, I make sure I
think we were frozen there for a moment, but I think she was saying that everywhere she goes, that she's a representative, that she's an ambassador. And so we thank you so much
His
for sharing that.
Excellency wants me to be part of it. I am being engaged to participate within the country. So that is my
Wonderful.
role.
Thank you for everything that you are doing for Ghana and internationally, because it doesn't stop there. Thank you so very much. So we are going to move on to our last and final speaker. I am so very delighted to have an incredible woman with us for this International Day of Diplomacy for women, and especially for those that are not only in the US, but for Cameroon. And so I want to tell you some about our next speaker. Dr. Antoinette Carol Grace Mbarga is a small business owner, an activist, and a consultant in Washington, D.C. Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Antoinette Carol Grace Mbarga is an award-winning certified global trainer, human rights advocate, and community activist with a heartfelt, visible commitment to serve the world at local and global levels. Born and raised in Cameroon, she's been residing in the Washington metropolitan area for several decades. She's the current United Nations Global Peace Ambassador and serves as the Global Education Network Deputy Continental Director for Africa and International Internship University, IIU. She is a certified global trainer and country director for Cameroon. As an entrepreneur, she's CEO and founder of Afri Consulting International and the Mbarga Project. As a community leader, she has 20 plus years of experience working with individuals from diasporic socioeconomic backgrounds, especially Latino or African immigrants. She is a community activist and uses her social media handles to raise awareness on domestic violence, human trafficking, women and girls' rights, as well as high-profile human rights violation cases in the international community. She was instrumental in making public the recent racial discrimination endured by African immigrants fleeing the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. In 2017, she founded the Miss Africa USA internship program focused on the education of the girl child with emphasis on encouraging Black girls to pursue careers in the STEM fields of sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics. She serves as congressional intern for Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee and successfully organized a Do Not Cancel the DV lottery community protest before Congress and the White House. For outstanding services to the community, she has a myriad of awards, a myriad of things that she has been congratulated for in all of her work. It is my great pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Antoinette Carol Grace Mbarga. You are very welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yes, good morning, good morning. Earlier on, we just had like an emergency meeting session. I thought I wasn't going to be here, but it's just one of those things, like what the Lord has ordained, that's just what's going to happen. So when we talk about cross-cultural skills in diplomacy for women, I like to start with one of my favorite quotes from my Marvel series. This is from Spider-Man. Yes, I like to watch cartoons and stuff. And I learned from watching the very first Spider-Man that with great power comes greater responsibilities. That which means that when you serve as a UN, a global peace ambassador, you must have cross-cultural skills. What does that mean? It's just your ability to understand that we live in a different world. The way you were raised, Dr. Anita, is not the same way I was raised. People have religious differences, social, economic differences, and for you to serve as a purpose-driven ambassador, you have to be able to understand that sometimes, or even if I can say most of the time, where you think that your liberty ends, that's when somebody else's liberty starts. You have to be able to understand that people come in different shapes of colors and different backgrounds, different academic backgrounds. So my taking all this is simply that we have to learn how to respect one another. We have to learn how to show each other grace, because we live in a world that is becoming more and more judgmental. I don't even understand what the purpose of it is. We judge each other, especially around us women in our sisterhood. We judge one sister for her level of education. We don't understand that maybe she grew up in Afghanistan, where the Taliban are going back, taking the power for young girls to be educated. We judge them on the way they dress. Oh, this person is a little bit showing off a lot of skin. This other person is covered from head to toe with a hijab, and so on and so forth. Different cultures means that our world, it's basically a melting pot. It means that I live here in the US. I've been living here since 2001. Every single day, I come across people from different backgrounds. So you cannot have a one size fits all, if I can say, interpretation of what cross-cultural skills are. You have to be flexible. And then again, I said earlier that when we talk about grace, showing each other grace, being more empathic, being more understanding, and then literally just holding another human being's hand, because the world that we live in, the fast-paced world that we live in, people don't have the same understanding at the same pace as everybody else. So you cannot, as a top diplomat, go on a mission in a country and you think that you're going to be able to apply by the book what you have learned. You have to be able to connect with the community that you want to serve. And how do you maintain those connections? By applying cross-cultural skills. When it comes down to women, we have seen a rise on women empowerment all over the world. The United Nations Security Council has authorized so many landmark resolutions, like Resolution 1325 on women, peace and equity. We've seen an increasing call for women to step in leadership positions. Personally, one of my gifts, if I can say, call it that way, is to see that now, I think in Mexico, we have a female president. So how do we apply cross-cultural skills as women with this sister? It's like maybe when we move down to Mexico, if you're from a country where a woman has never been the top leader of a nation, show her some grace, show her some understanding, surround her with love, surround her with patience and care, right? And one thing I learned about our jobs is that we are, I usually say that we are the uncles and the aunties we wanted to have when we were growing up, right? We are in our communities, we are those beacons of light that we wanted to have when we were growing up. And you cannot be that beacon of light for a young person growing up in a literally like a multiverse world like the one we have now, if you have this judgmental step of mindsets, if you don't show empathy, if you don't practice cross-cultural skills. I will leave our presentation here by just encouraging everybody. Again, it sounds redundant, but as an educator, I believe that if you say something several times, people will be able to grasp it. It means if you didn't get it the first time, second time, the third time, maybe when I say it for the fifth time, it will grab your attention. So please, let's show each other grace. Let's hold each other's hand. Let's show each other mercy when it comes to some situation. And let's cast aside all the judgments and break down all these barriers that sometimes we are just built in the construct of our own minds. We are all a sisterhood. We are one humanity. We have to rally around each other. Our wars are not against each other. No, our wars are not against our own cultural differences, but the common enemies we have are some things like poverty, lack of adequate education. I'm from Cameroon, and in 2024, we still have places where kids don't have potable water. For young ladies, we even have sanitary campaigns, right? Where in some areas of the world, girls don't have access to sanitary pads. These are the common enemies that we have, not each other, not each other's, if I can call it like a line of work. So please, let's continue to show each other grace, support one another, love on one another. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Carol Mbarga. You mentioned a few poignant things that I want to bring out right now. You mentioned that women, depending on how they are raised, may or may not be a part of the diplomatic process or understand what that means. And so that's why forums like this are important, so that we can actually get our definitions correct. We can actually speak to these things intelligently and not be guessing or apply things to people that aren't applicable, right? And you also mentioned about having cross-cultural skills, which I totally love. There's a lot of training that goes into being an ambassador, that goes into being able to communicate with people on the other side of the table. You may not speak their language, right? You may not be able to understand their laws. And this takes training, it takes time. It takes applying yourself in a different way so that you can be the one to bring peace. You can be the one to be a diplomat and maybe change some laws and legislation in that particular area. I also like how you said that our wars are not against each other. How powerful. Our wars are against poverty, you mentioned. It's against women not having certain rights and privileges. It's against those things that we fight every day. It's not against one another. I love how you brought that out. And so we want to thank you so much for being here. I want to bring all four of our panelists, if you can on your cameras, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Grace Mbarga, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie, if we can have you both here. We want to ask you all a few questions. And if you have questions in the chat, please go ahead and mention that. We do have a comment after Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Grace Mbarga. It says, that is true. You have to connect with the community you want to serve. And another person said, yes, I agree. When Ketanji Brown became the first African-American Supreme Court judge, I encouraged lots of sisters to flood her with cards and words of encouragement. Yes, we must support and encourage our fellow sisters. Someone else said it's important to be diversified. How incredible. And so our first question is going to go to Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie. You are part of African Union 6th region, which many people are unfamiliar with. Can you tell us more about that and what your diplomatic role is in that institution?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. The African Union 6th region is, so let me begin by saying the African Union consists of 5 regions on the continent of Africa. So there are 5 of them on the continent. The 6th region is made up of everybody else. The United States, the Caribbean, Canada are all included, and there are other countries that are coming on, but it includes all people of African descent outside of the continent. That is the 6th region. What they have been endeavoring to do is to establish a leadership coalition for each state in the United States. And there are a number of leaders who have stepped up. I believe Dr. Mckaney is one as well, to serve as state leaders in their prospective states. And our role is basically to serve people of African descent, to help move in those communities, to help serve those. I like what Dr. Mbarga said, that you have to connect with the communities that you want to serve. And as it happens, I came up the last several, I want to say 7, 8, 9, 10 years in a church that represented over 63 countries, and many of them in Africa, from Cameroon to Nigeria to South Sudan. That's how I got to go on that mission trip to South Sudan, because we had people from South Sudan actually on our staff. So it was an opportunity for, what my point is, for me to grow and to get to know other cultures, to get to talk to people who don't eat what I eat and who don't dress like I dress, and, you know, to appreciate their way of worship and, you know, all of those things. And so, and our church was affiliated with other churches just like ours. And so what I hope to do is to be able to parlay those experiences into serving those in the African Union 6 region. And we intend to do that in a number of ways. We just had an innovation science fair, which was great. And we had some students who put together projects from a farming irrigation project to a clean water project. The students were just phenomenal. We had high schoolers and middle schoolers, and we had the younger kids as well. So that's just one of the initiatives that they've done. And that the final round was done right here in Maryland. And I went to attend to help officiate that project. So those are some of the things that I hope to be doing and to continue doing in the state of Maryland.
That is wonderful. Yeah, excellent. And it's important to kind of start where you are. A lot of people want the big stage of diplomacy. They want to be international and global, and your neighbor doesn't know you. You haven't done anything for your community. You haven't done anything for your, you know, school system where you live. So all of those things are important. And I think a lot of people need to realize that we didn't just get here. This was a process. And people notice the things that we are doing, and then the awards come, right, Dr. Mbarga, then the other things happen. And so I see that your hand is raised. Go ahead and chime in. But before you do, I also want to especially note that we have a wonderful ambassador in the house right now that I will not neglect to note. Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Ada Juni is here. You are very welcome, Your Excellency. Thank you for being here. If you have anything you would like to add, we would love to hear your input as well. But first, let's hear from Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Grace Mbarga.
I mean, I just wanted to piggyback on the amount of work that is needed before you reach all the perks. Young people nowadays, I call them the microwave generation. It means that, okay, you attended a seminar or a conference like this one, and then you think like the next morning you wake up and you're a UN Global Peace Ambassador. That is not how it works. It takes years of sacrifices and giving back to the community, like Dr. Gracie said. Sometimes you have to travel out of your comfort zone to go live in the communities that you are serving. Sometimes you have to go out of your way to make sure that you are available to the people that you are serving. Our young people nowadays, especially our young ladies, the ones that I mentor, I always tell them that when you see a female leader in the spotlight, just don't look at all the glitz and the glamour, right? Behind all that are years and years of personal sacrifices, and also just having that commitment to serve the community through thick and thin, through recessions, through inflations, through times when money is available. You have to stick to the calling to serve the community. So I will just keep on encouraging us to keep on being those beacons of light, especially for our young girls. I will end this particular segment here by saying that when you look at our society, right, it seems that the anti-models are the ones that are being raised to become, if I can say, excuse the pun, like the superheroes for our young girls out there. We take females who have nothing in common with the values that we are trying to teach our young people. And those are the ones that it seems to me that society is praising out there. So I would like to see more of us like Dr. Anita, Dr. Gracie, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown, Michelle Obama, all those amazing women just stepping into the public light and showing our young ladies that we got here, not by, excuse the term, shaking our behinds, barely dressed, but we got here because we were serving the community day in and day out.
Excellent point. And I would just like to add to that, it also takes a huge dose of humility, because you will find yourself in situations where maybe you are being sent, and speaking to someone from another nation, and you're culturally inappropriate, and it may affect the conversation or what you are trying to do with diplomacy. It's possible that you may be embarrassed at times. There are times when you are trying to help someone and actually you are hurting them. You're hurting the environment. I've learned a lot about that through humanitarian diplomacy. Sitting on the International Consulting Cabinet, we often learn about different cultures. We have to learn about languages. We have to learn about even the way you address someone, the way you dress, or the way you don't dress appropriately. All of these things come into play. And if you are not a humble person, if you don't have a humble demeanor, you will not be able to function on a diplomatic stage. It's not something you can do. And so I saw a hand up from Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie.
Yes, I just wanted to comment or piggyback on my colleague, Dr. Carolyn Varga. She said something that was phenomenal. She said, when you look at women who are serving in the community, that they didn't just arrive there. And I just wanted to point out that all of us, Dr. Ketanji Brown, Michelle Obama, these women served in those roles at great personal sacrifice. They were scourged from, from the day they stepped on the stage. They suffered all kinds of persecution, all kinds of questioning their character, from questioning, it came at a price, is the point that I want to make. And all of us pay that price if we're going to serve in humility. There is a price to be paid. There's always going to be misunderstanding, and there's always going to be people judging. And like you said, but we have to maintain a demeanor of humility so that we don't let it get inside of us, and we don't allow our buttons to be pushed, so to speak. And it takes time, it takes training, and as Dr. Embarga said, we have to give each other grace and allow one another to grow into our roles and to mature into our roles. But these are very important things to know. When you step into an arena like this, there's always, you ever seen those shows on TV that said the dark side of this and the dark side of that? There is a side to which that is satisfying. It's satisfying to give of our time and efforts and to feel like we're making a difference. But there is a dark side, and we have to live and move and have our being in both.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Beautiful. So I want to thank you, ladies, for being here. And I want to open the floor to anyone who would like to have a comment, or if you have a question for any of our speakers in particular, the floor is open at this time. Anyone with a question or comment? Okay. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for being here. Before
I
we
do
leave,
have a comment.
Thank you.
I do have a comment. I just want to thank you ladies for actually sharing on the platform just clearly about what diplomacy is, but through and ambassadorship, but also just sharing what it takes. Like I put in the chat, it takes work. And I think Dr. Dr. Grace for actually saying that it takes humility because it's very important. I just want to thank you ladies for being very detailed in regards to what it is in being in diplomacy, but also behind the scenes, sharing about what it took for these women to be in the position that they have been in to actually pave the way for all of us women in the space and place that we're in today. So thank you once again for your time today. Thank you for the insight and the wisdom and knowledge that you all share today on this platform.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Anyone else?
I mean, it's always a pleasure, particularly for me, to meet like-minded people, to connect with, if I can say, the sisterhood. So this has been a great experience. I would have had a very horrible morning if I wasn't able to connect and attend this particular gathering.
It was a rough morning, but you made it. You made it.
Anyway, Dr. Gracie is here. Yes, yes, yes.
Oh my goodness. I am so glad to have met you today, woman of God. I'm so glad. We are right down here in the same neck of the woods, and I have been wanting to meet you. And so this might be as close as we get today, but we're going to meet in person soon.
Oh, all right. That's what I like. Yeah.
So I just want to give each of our speakers an opportunity to just give closing remarks, and then we'll end for today. And we'll begin with Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Rejoice Foli. What are your closing remarks for today?
We have a mission, and we need to accomplish that mission. As always, if you are blessed with a gift, and this is the utterance that the Lord has given to us, that go and be ambassadors. What I want to say is, Alexander the Great once said, I am not afraid of an army of lions being led by a sheep, but I am afraid of an army of sheep being led by a lion. Are we the lions that are being led by a sheep, or we are the sheep that is leading lions? Secondly, are we the sheep that are being led by the lion, or we are the lions leading the sheep? We are ambassadors for Christ. Let's understand our mission and get it right. God bless us all.
Thank you. Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Angela Gracie.
I heard last night, I was in a meeting. As a matter of fact, I was in a meeting with Dr. Ada. And one of the things that was brought out to us by Dr. Carl Christian, he said, in everything that we do, that our first priority is to please God. And that as ambassadors, not only as ambassadors in the world, but as ambassadors of Christ. I think that when we walk and please God, the scriptures tell us that even our enemies will have to be at peace with us. And so as we walk and carry out our assignments as global peace ambassadors, that we do it, everything that we say and we do be done to the glory of God. And I think that will be okay.
Most definitely. Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Carol Grissom Barker.
My parting words would just be for all of us to practice self-care. Find ways to take care of yourself, because when you serve as a humanitarian and in these huge roles, Most of the time we pour so much out into our communities that we forget about ourselves. And since we are talking about diplomacy for women, I think it's that motherly side that all women have, that you give until you completely deplete yourself of your energy. So I would just encourage each one of us, practice self-care, whatever self-care means to you. Even if it means like by the time you pull up to your house, you crank that seat back, listen to some music, tune the world off, that is fine. My second point is also practice self-appreciation. We live in a world where the society is quick to put labels on you when you do something wrong. So learn how to appreciate yourself. After this particular gathering, I will make sure that I go on TikTok shop. I will buy myself something just for being here. Yes, I have to show appreciation to myself, right? We work so hard to try to make our world a better place. To me, it just seems literally like a little ridiculous that you will not be able to purchase yourself maybe like a handbag or get yourself that ice cream because it's hot outside. Yes, treat yourself. It doesn't have to be something big, but every single milestone on your journey of ambassadorship, on your journey as a diplomat, make sure that you practice self-appreciation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that is our session for today. We are so pleased that each and every one of our speakers has come and brought tremendous value, education, and has given us a lot to think about, a lot to swallow. And if you're a note taker, I hope you got plenty of notes this time. And if not, you can find this entire presentation on the Wifestyle Image Network YouTube page. It will be uploaded very soon this week. So thank you so much for being a part of this presentation. God bless you all on this International Day of Women in Diplomacy. God bless you. Until next time. Bye-bye.
God bless you.